Here we go. Now we're starting out with our blank master graph, which we had before. All I did was delete all the nodes that were within it. And then we have our steel example, which we'll leave there. We don't have to delete it, but we are going to use it in our example because I already have materials that I've created previously. And if you want good references for creating materials, you can find some online. Just Google them. If you have nDo, they have all of their material information, their diffuse, the specular, the gloss values in XML format if you want to create some materials based off that. There's all sorts of options if you want to kind of create a base library that you need to work from. Otherwise, just create them as you need them, create them as you like them. So when you see me pull from my list here of materials that I've already created, that's all I've done. I've just made a few stock ones as I needed them, and then I pull them out as required. Okay. So we have our master graph here, and we have the maps that we created in Photoshop, the normal maps and the material ID maps. We don't yet have those in Substance Designer yet, though. Okay. So in fact, let me delete this steel example. We'll name these resources by hitting F2 after you select it, and we'll call this box haul resources. Okay, so we're going to have all of our base resources in here. We have the mesh item that we imported before, but when you right click on top of the folder, you can link other assets, and in our case it's going to be a bitmap. So let's find the folder that we created and save these documents to. So we have our material ID map here, and we have our normal map. This is one that I created with the wrong name. So we can open both of those at once. And now when you're importing PSDs into Substance Designer, it lets you import each layer individually. I don't really want to do that. I don't want to have access to each individual layer. I just want the final compressed document as one item within Substance Designer. So I'm going to hit the None option here to deselect all of these options, right? And then I'm just going to select the parent folder, I guess you can call it here, for the material ID. So I just get this image here, and then I'm going to scroll down and go to my normal map document and just select the parent there as well. There we go. Hit OK to complete the import, and there they are. Bam. We've got our material ID map. Left click and drag it into the viewport. There it is down here. And this is where the 2D texture really comes into play here. Whenever you double click any texture here, it will show up down here. And then we have our normal map. Left click and drag that bad boy in there. Double click, and there it is in all its glory. Okay, so we're going to use these documents to create our a similar layered material. We won't create the full graph that I did when I made the example level that you saw. There was probably a dozen nodes in there, and it takes time to feel through it, but what I will give you is an overview to create something that may be appealing. Okay, so first things first, we will go to our material filters option in our library, and all of these items here are provided by Allegorithmic when you purchase Substance Designer. Okay, this custom folder down here is something that I made to put my own unique assets in, but the rest you have access to. So open the material filters option and drag your multi-material blend node here as we did before, and now we're going to connect the materials that we want here. So when we made a material ID map, what we had in mind was like a basic gunmetal material, a steel, a rubber, and a painted metal. Okay, so is it 4 materials? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 2 material slots in our multi-material blend. We have material 1, material 2. We need to add 2 more, and it's simple enough. You just left click here on the node, and over here in the properties you can change the material number to 4. There you go. Now we have 4 slots. Now we have to drag the materials that we want in here. And again, as a reminder, when I say materials, what I really mean is if I hit number 1 on the keyboard, you see this guy grow a lot. So what you really see when you're looking at these green nodes, like I explained in the last video, you're looking at a diffuse, normal, specular, gloss, roughness, metallic, ambient, occlusion, or height. Those are your options for importing full materials. In our case, all we used was diffuse, normal, roughness, and metallic. Okay, if you're using the other physically based model, glossiness will work, and specular will work. You can use specular in Unreal Engine. I don't. I just leave it at the default 0.5 value. It seems to work fine. And again, we're not using ambient occlusion. You could make a height map if you wanted to do like a parallax occlusion map kind of effect, like blend your normal map with a height map and kind of get some offsets. But again, we're not going to do that either. We're just going to focus on diffuse color, normal, roughness, and metallic. Okay, so I'm going to hit number 3 to condense the graph. And really what this feature is in Substance Designer is a way to condense all of your nodes and your noodles. And by noodles I mean these little guys that extend out from your nodes. It's really to simplify that connection process for you. Okay, so your yellow color is for a basic color image. It's gray when Substance expects a grayscale image. So I'm going to take some basic materials that I created before, just like we did with our steel example, right? And I'm going to pick my gunmetal, drag it in. And you'll notice that the gunmetal here, it's a different color than what we have here. Because again, this material ID map color doesn't mean anything except designating some colors for this map, right? For this node to separate your material layers by. And I'll show you a good example. So I'm going to connect the gunmetal to this bottom layer because that's the base layer that I created. That's material 1. And there is no way to modulate the base material in this. When you click on this node here, your base material is it's not even available as an option. So your base material is going to appear all over your object. So let me right click and choose View Outputs in 3D View. And of course I get nothing because it's not connected. There we go. So now, because I connected my gunmetal into the bottom slot, I have gunmetal all over my object. Right? It's a very, it's a fairly rough type of metal. Okay. And again, if I were to open my, just so you don't get confused here, I can open my gunmetal graph by dragging it up into my my Explorer here, and then double-clicking on gunmetal, and this is all it is. Diffuse color here, roughness, metallic set as white because it's a metal object, and a blank normal map. Nothing special. The most important aspects being the metallic, diffuse color, and the roughness, right? Which has to match metal type look. And the normal map I created as a blank one so that I can overlay other normal images on top of that if I want. But at the moment, all it is going to be a flat tangent space normal. Let me open up the master graph again, and now we're back. So again, those diffuse colors are connected automatically for me when I just grab the green noodle. If you need to, you can connect each node individually, but why do that? It takes a lot of time. There are some cases that you need to. We may touch on those later. But for right now, we're just going to focus on the layered material workflow. We drag the normal map down here in the material map here. We'll need those later. Okay, so what other colors do we have here? Let's double click on our material ID map, and we have the gunmetal. Now let's pick a steel material and let's drag it into the graph. It's all sorted alphabetically here. Steel. There we go. Okay. So we'll connect steel into layer 2, and you'll notice that nothing happens in this graph. That's because, one, I don't have this material ID map connected, but even when I do, you're not going to see any change, right, in the final output material. And why is that? Because I didn't tell this node which color I want to associate with the steel. And what do I mean by that? Well, again, gunmetal is this color, and the reason that gunmetal appeared by default is because it's the base color. It's going to appear no matter what, all over the model. Okay, every other material node that I add after that is going to be modulated. The range of it's going to be dictated by the colors I have here, but I still have to tell Substance Designer which colors I want to associate with which material. Okay, so you look in the material list here. You have material 2, 3, 4, and if you zoom really close, it's always cut off, but material 1 is here, material 2 is there, 3, 4, and so on. Okay, so material 2 is my steel. And I want to modulate material 2 by this color here. Right, this is the color that it lets you choose to dictate where on the model you want your steel to appear. So let me quickly load my MID map by double clicking on it, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And only single click on your multi-material blend node here. When I pick this color, I get a color swatch picker that comes up. And rather than trying to decide and match the color as I need it, what I can do is just select the pick option here, and then go down to my material ID map that I had loaded here when I double clicked on it, and then left click once on that map, and booyah, there you have it. Okay, you have the steel appearing wherever there's gray and gunmetal where there's not. And we can do the same thing for our painted metal. So let's grab that node. We find the P's here, painted metal. I'll connect that into material slot number 3. Left click once on top of the blend node. And then we'll go to material 3, color picker, pick the yellow down here. Okay, and you can see that it turned red. It can be any color I want. When I created this node, I made sure that I left the diffuse color option exposed, and I can get into those details later, but there's actually a lot better videos on a Logarithmic's site and in their user guide how to expose parameters. That's another great option with substances. You can create these graphs and you can just leave them as is, or you can allow yourself to expose different parameters. I can even expose the roughness if I wanted here, or the metallic setting. But all I'm concerned about changing is just the actual color of the paint on the metal. So I left that open. I can change that to green if I wanted, and you'll see that change here. I can do yellow. You just pick something that you like. If you want better control, you can select it here. We change the hue a little bit. Maybe do a more red look. Desaturate it a bit more. That's fine. And what you'll notice now is that the model is a little bit flat. Okay? Now, it's because I haven't plugged in my normal map here. Now, if I wanted to, I could create a base material with this normal map in it that we painted. So say I could plug this into the gunmetal material. I don't necessarily want to edit this material. I want to keep it kind of standard, right? Because I'm going to change this normal map every time I make every time I import an asset. So what I'm going to do is kind of keep things simple. I can add this normal map to the default normal map in the output. And what I'm viewing here is everything from these outputs. So whatever I blend and whatever effects I add, by the time it reaches here, I'll see it in this viewport. And right now, I do not have this normal map connected. So there's an easy way to do that. Select your normal maps list in your library down here and get your normal combine node. And what that allows you to do is take one normal and overlay it onto another. So I'm going to take this normal, plug it into my normal 2 slot. And then I don't have an option, as you notice, to pull a normal map out in this mode. But if I hit the number 1 on my keyboard, you'll see that I have access to each individual node here. Here's my normal channel, which is going out directly to this normal option. Okay, so I'm going to bring that normal down, left click, drop it in there, and you'll see in the output, if I double click on this node, that's what my normal map's going to look like, and that's just what I want. I'll take this output, drag it into this normal map there, and bam, you can see immediately in the viewport your normal map appears. Okay, I can leave that connected as is. I don't have to touch the normal map anymore if I don't want to. Okay, and so every new asset I import a new model, I import the material ID and the normal map, and I just take the normal map and I'll drag it into the slot, and then the whole graph will automatically update. Right, I drag the new material ID map into here, and the whole thing will update with new information. Okay. That's a quick way to change this information. Now let me add the rubber. I haven't added that one yet onto the hose. Go down to my R's here, find my standard rubber, drag that in there, put that into the top slot, Now again, this node doesn't know where I want the rubber to go, so I have to make sure that if I just double click on this master node, you see that the diffuse color here appears in the 2D editor. That's not what I want, right? So you double click on one image, it'll bring that up in the 2D image editor. If you single click, it'll leave the image that you previously had double clicked on here. But if you single click, it'll bring the properties up over here. And that's important because sometimes you want to change properties for one node, but view the image of another, like in this case. So I'm going to go to my material 4, which is the rubber that I just connected in the top here. Select color, pick, and then choose my rubber color, which is right here on that hose. And then you'll see the hose just updated with a different color. Okay? And again, the rubber is a non-metallic, dark black rubber. And I believe I have the rubber color here exposed in my channel. I do. So I can change this color to anything I want. I'll probably go for maybe a lighter gray. And you'll see that update here. Maybe something a little darker. Maybe more of a blue. So let me saturate it a bit more. See what that gives me in the viewport here. Add a little bit more value to get a little bit brighter. Less. A little more saturation to add more blue tint. That's fine for now. And again, that rubber button is the same one here. I can make an entirely different color rubber if I wanted. And I don't like that painted metal very much, so let me change that to something maybe we'll do a blue. Blue's cool sometimes. Anything you want. It's your world when you're within Substance Designer. Okay, make sure you save your graph often because Substance Designer is a pretty stable program, but every now and then it can crash and you can lose your work. So now we have everything we created here, and you could just leave this as is if you're happy. But the problem is this map, these materials are far too clean for the real world, right? So you're going to want to add some scratches and some dirt and some dust, and Substance Designer does a great job of giving you access to those options, right? So let's do that next. What I will do is just, I'll stop this video for now, and now that you've seen how to get basic materials into Substance Designer, and if you want to export these materials now, if you're happy and you need texture maps, you can just right click on your master graph, export outputs as bitmaps, and here you go. You choose where you want to save them, the type of file that you need. So if it's Targa, if you're using Unreal Engine, in most cases, sometimes PSD. And then you can choose the automatic naming convention of them, right? So if you want to call this, it's going to use the graph name by default, but you can do box haul if you wanted. And so your diffuse is going to be called box haul diffuse, normal, roughness, metallic, just like that. Okay. And in the next video, what we'll do is working on adding effects, right, to make this a little bit more dirty. We'll talk about baking maps in Substance Designer to drive those effects, and then how to merge your final outputs. All right, see you then.